Live from Houston, Texas, the humidity capital of the world, it's time for Money for Lunch, where we feed your brain and your business with supersized portions of business and financial news. Now your host, Bert Martinez.
Simona Farrise, founder of the Farrise law firm, has established herself as among the top lawyers in the country. Ms. Farrise is a sought-after national public speaker on various topics, legal topics concerning trials, jury work, and other matters. For each year from 2004 through 2013, San Francisco Magazine named her one of Northern California's super lawyers. She's also been recognized as one of the top 50 females in California law, or female lawyers in California. How's that? My pleasure to welcome Simona Farrise. Welcome to Money for Lunch.
Hi, thanks for having me.
All right. Hey, let me ask you this. As a trial attorney, what important changes have you noticed in the law as it relates to how justice is delivered to real people, let's just say over the last 20 years since you've been practicing?
Well, there's been a number of changes, really. I think when I represent people, individuals, and families who have been harmed in one way or another, and most people have an idea that, maybe it's from the media, whatever it happens to be, that you just start a lawsuit, I'm going to sue somebody. You hear a lot from comedians who sort of throw that around. But the realities of actually bringing a lawsuit when you've been hurt or injured or fired from your job are very different. Most people learn that, justice, I like to say, is not really free. It's not fast, and sometimes it's not fair. So just getting into court, having your day in court for a variety of reasons is much, much harder nowadays than it ever was. There's so many roadblocks to that, even if you can find a lawyer who's willing to help you.
Gotcha. Do you think that, let's say, jurors today have, what's the word I'm looking for, maybe they've also changed? I mean, are you finding that jurors today are more conservative when it comes out to things like punitive damages or awarding compensation, or are they more liberal? What's your take?
Well, I think that, it's hard to generalize at any point about jurors. Obviously, people's perceptions of what jurors are doing, whether it be awarding money or finding punitive damages, is really heavily influenced by what the media is telling them is happening. But the reality of what is happening is usually far different. People who sit on juries, in my experience, and I've, tried cases all over the state of California and other places, are typically very conscientious people. I mean, they definitely start off with the notion, like a lot of people, that I don't want to be there. I'd rather be doing something else. But once they actually get chosen, once you go through the vetting process, once people raise their hand and take an oath, really, to say, I'm going to do the job of a juror, I'm going to be a good citizen, I'm going to listen to the evidence, I would say 9 times out of 10 people do that. And then when you get in a court of law, you asked about punitive damages. People, because of the media in part, have this notion that punitive damages, are given out pretty freely, and nothing really could be further from the truth. Typically, when you have a situation where a jury awards punitive damages, it is going to be the defendant's or the company's conduct. And, if you think about it along the lines of, what needs to happen in a criminal case for jurors to say, I'm going to mete out real consequences, whether it be, sending somebody to jail or, something really, severe such as the death penalty or something like that. Jurors sit there and they hear evidence about some real bad conduct that they say, really as the voice and the conscience of the community, you know what, this is not appropriate. This is so far outside the bounds, number one, that you should, have real consequences. But number two, you really hurt somebody. And so in a civil case where you don't have real consequences, you can't send a CEO to jail, let's say, for making the decision to, put profits over the lives of people. All they have is money. But punitive damages, for instance, very, very rare, but when they occur, it's usually because there is a mountain of evidence that there is really guilt along the lines of what, would cause a juror to mete out some, criminal consequences if that were available, but all they have is money. So that's what happens. I think in terms of compensation, again, getting into court, having an effective lawyer, having someone who can make 12 people understand what it means to have real injury, what it means to lose your job if, for instance, you've been the main breadwinner in your family, and you've had to provide for your wife and your children, and through no fault of your own, you are fired from one day to the next for wrongful reasons. That can have a serious impact on people, to have, to have your health taken away. I really think, what I've seen and what I see in a lot of cases is people don't, we talk a lot about health and nutrition and good health and good living, but there's only so much you can do. When something happens through no fault of your own, to have your good health taken away, it can change the course of your life. So I think that juries listen to all that, and where appropriate, they do the job of a juror, and they realize that money is the way our civil justice system works, and they try and, figure out what is a, commensurate amount of money that will equal somebody's good health for the next 2 years or 5 years, or, if it's the case of a death, having someone's life end prematurely. So I think jurors do a good job. I just think that right now, especially in California, we're faced with having not enough resources to get cases to trial, not enough resources to have people actually have a real day in court. And those kind of things really impact, really kind of how good of a job jurors can do. So that's what we're faced with.
Right. No, and I like that. I like the fact that as an insider, you still look at the jury system as a viable way of dispensing justice, because a lot of people think that our judicial system is broken, but you think that the jury system, for the most part, do a pretty good job.
Well, I think that it could definitely be improved, but I think that it is the best system that we have. It is what separates one of those, fundamental things that separates being an American from being a citizen of, pretty much anywhere else in the world. I had an opportunity to look at really kind of how justice is dispensed in other parts of the world, whether it be Western nations or developing nations, and the American legal system is the one place where, John Smith, who is, working his way, through college or to feed his family or whatever it happens to be, who can't afford high-priced lawyers, it is the one place where they at least have the possibility of standing on equal ground with the most powerful companies and the most powerful people who, have unending wealth. So it's not perfect. There are some things and certainly some challenges to our systems that concern a lot of people, but it's much better than anything else that anybody has, and it's one of those things that ought to make most people, when they really realize that, proud to be an American because of what we do have the opportunity, to have in case we need it.
Sure. Let me ask you this. Let me get your thought on this. If, speaking of, John Q. Public, and, how might an individual consumer who really have no contact with the law, I mean, they have, for the average person out there doesn't have any knowledge about the justice system, about interacting with a judge, interacting with a lawyer, how would you best advise these people as far as finding a lawyer? How do you properly vet a potential attorney?
Well, I'm so glad you asked me that, because that is such a sort of pertinent question right now. As with everything in our lives, we have been taken over. We as a profession in the law have been taken over really by sort of internet marketing and other kind of, really high-priced marketing approaches, if you will. It's probably not lost on any of your listeners, the TV marketing for lawyers, which, it has been a relatively recent phenomena. So, here you are or a loved one. Let's take, my practice has been representing people who have died of mesothelioma and asbestos cancer. Certainly there's a lot of advertisement about that. My firm doesn't advertise. We just do the work. So it's, the question for a consumer would be, how do you get to us when we're not on TV, when we're not doing all those big flashy things that a lot of people do who are actually not handling the cases? I think you have to, consumers have to, they have to be consumers. They have to ask questions. They have to say to a lawyer who is saying they want to take on a very large commitment of theirs, for instance, representing our family for wrongful death. Have you done this before, right?
Right.
This is not really the time to have your first rodeo. I think you want to ask the hard questions of, how many cases does your firm take in? Will you, whoever the person is that you talk to, actually be the one to handle my case, from the beginning to the end? Will you be there when we file the lawsuit? And if we have to go to court and have to have a trial, have to talk to the judge, have to face the jury, will you be the one sitting there at the table? Because what has happened really in the legal profession is you have the influence of marketing. I'm not going to say it's bad.
Right.
I mean, I think some parts of it is good. But, it is representing people who have been injured is still a service business. And consumers might approach vetting a lawyer just as they would if they have a choice to vet a doctor who provides a service to them. How do you distinguish between all other doctors? Insurance agent, anyone who is a professional that is, you hope, providing professional services.
Right. And I like what you said there. It's, again, nothing wrong with somebody who advertises on TV. I mean, that's perfectly legit way to promote and grow your business. However, when you're looking at something that's complicated and possibly not just complicated, but this is something that you hope you're not going to do but once in your lifetime, I think it takes, it makes sense to take the time to do the research and ask, hey, is this what you specialize in? Because if they are a personal injury attorney, but they specialize in car accidents, this may not be the law firm that you want to represent you in a case like asbestos poisoning or cancer or some other tragic situation that they don't specialize in, right?
Right. Well, there's really three parts, and you hit the first one on the head. It's complex. If you're talking about something like, a mesothelioma case, there's really no room for inexperience and error. So the complexity is number one. Number two, it's personal. This is not, basically the kind of thing where, you got cheated out of an extra dollar on your phone bill. This is something, these kind of, serious injury cases where it is going to change the course of someone's life. In the case of mesothelioma and asbestos cancer that has no cure, someone is likely going to die. And what that means is that there's going to be a family left behind. There's going to be, a life cut short. And then number three, going through that kind of a case, a lawsuit, when you have all of these other important things going on where you've had your life turned upside down because of whatever has happened, you're going to have a relationship with the lawyer or the lawyers, the legal team, and the law firm. And you want to make sure that who you think you're hiring, even if you call on TV, are going to be the people who you want to have what is a very important relationship. Communication, all the things that people value in any kind of a relationship, you want to have that, if you can, in a legal relationship.
Right.
So there is
now, let me ask
nothing
you
wrong
this.
with really
I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit because you hit something that I think most people, and I believe to this day it's still the number one complaint that the bar gets, speaking of communication, and that is, my attorney won't call me back.
Mm-hmm.
What do you
Right.
do? I mean, what do you do in a situation when you have an attorney who's not calling you back? And obviously the bar's not going to get really involved with this because they're not necessarily breaking the law. They're not, I don't know if it's even breaking the what do you call it, the conduct that the bar even would look at. So what do you do? You guide me through this. Walk me through this.
Well, I think it's first of all, a good business practice for any business, obviously, that provides services to try and figure out how are we going to effectively communicate with our clients. And, that's one of those questions, actually, that you want to take up sooner in the relationship rather than later in the relationship. I mean, you want to understand. I like to ask my clients and try and understand how best to communicate with them. Just like one-stop education systems don't work, one-stop client, one-size-fits-all client models don't work. For instance, if I have a client who has been wrongfully terminated, I hate to say it, they're probably going to be at home worrying about, how they're going to pay the bills. They're probably going to be looking for a job. They probably are going to want a lot of communication about what is happening with their case. They're going to want to understand the process, how long it takes. You have to be honest. On the other hand, if I have a family who has come to me and said, lo and behold, we were living a great life. Our kids just went off to college. My husband just got diagnosed with mesothelioma cancer. The doctors now say, we're going to be facing chemo and things like that. They, on the other hand, may not want to be talking to lawyers all day long. I expect that they probably would not, but they would want some level of regular communication. They want to know who the contact person is. Some people might say, you know what, I'm best on email because my life is so turned upside down right now. So figuring that out, actually, and getting some clarity about how you are going to communicate with your lawyer, how best you're going to communicate with your lawyer, or whoever the point person will be in the legal team, is actually one of those important questions that when you set up a relationship going in, you need to nail that down so that people don't end up feeling like my lawyer won't call me back. Because you're right, there's nothing, it's frustrating to be put on hold, by a banking institution and hear that terrible, music, but it's another thing when you feel like your very survival is on the line and you want to know, what is happening with my case. You need to be able to contact someone, and if they don't have the information, they need to be able to quickly figure it out and get back to you. So, what I will say lastly is lawyers are not really taught well communication, okay? We get this impression through our training that if we do a good job, that's all that counts. But the truth of the matter is, what I try and tell people is to be an attorney means you are a counselor at law. And that counseling piece is never more prevalent than when you are a lawyer who has a practice where you represent real people. I mean, if you represent insurance companies, you can send them a letter or whatever they want. But when you represent real people, you need to be a counselor at law. You got to listen. You got to see what you can and cannot do and be honest about what you can and cannot accomplish. And you have to communicate. And sometimes you actually have to tell people things they don't want to hear, and that's really a very hard part as well.
Here's what I find interesting about this is what you just said. Really, if you take the lawyer out of there or the counselor of law out of there, that is applicable to all businesses. If you are running a business that deals with people, you have to set up clear expectations how you're going to communicate. And kind of like what you said with the example of the person who lost their job versus the person who has a husband who's dying, you have to look at what your clients are going to need and how you can best fulfill those needs. Because ultimately, whether you're a lawyer, a doctor, a ditch digger, a house builder, you are in the business of people. And if your people are not happy, then you're going to get complaints. You're not going to get referrals. You're hurting yourself. And so you have to set up those expectations, during maybe the first or second meeting with your clients so, they know, okay, this guy told me he's not going to call me every week, and I can shoot him an email and he's going to respond best, or he told me to run everything through his secretary, whatever the system's going to be, you have to set that up ahead of time.
You have to set it up, and you have to make sure that people are going to be okay with it. There really are only so many hours in a day, and I like to tell my clients probably you would prefer that I'm in court doing what lawyers do, which is the thing that most people hire lawyers for because they can't do it themselves, than, basically calling people back from 9 to 5. But that doesn't mean that you can't have the communication that you need. I mean, a lot of times a little bit of information goes a long way. So, being a consumer, setting realistic expectations about communication, about cooperation. We're just talking about what clients need. I will tell you that from the perspective of a lawyer, sometimes, more often than not, you may not have the level of cooperation that you actually need from your clients, because a lot of times if people file a lawsuit, the other side gets to, under the rules, say, give me information about everything from A to Z. Well, I, as the lawyer, of course, don't have their personal information, and I don't have the date of birth of, their child or whatever it happens to be. So having client cooperation as well, there's work to be done, on that front, goes a long way to a successful outcome, which is ultimately why people come to hire a lawyer and why lawyers take on the cause of another.
Absolutely. Hey, you know what? I've enjoyed you on the show today. Great information, really great consumer tips on how to pick an attorney. It's been a delightful time having you on the show. Simona, Farrise, thank you so much for stopping by and sharing.
No problem. Talk to you. Bye.
All right.
Tune in Monday through Friday here on Money for Lunch and check out our website at moneyforlunch.com.